Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Baharudin bin Basu. Metric number 1817823 will present on the first subtopic of our presentation on the functions of the government. So my presentation will cover on the formation of a government according to the definition given by Ratschalders and Stillman in 2017, and the changes of functions in the government in the Western European countries from 16th to 19th century, and how the government should function, or how the scholars view the function of government in 20th century. So moving on, the formation of government started when people from different tribes organized themselves into a large group of people, and with the large number of people, they want to make sure that their internal and external safety were maintained, and they want to make sure that everyone needs were guaranteed. The government is important because it is ensure that everyone need in the imagined community, which is people do not recognize each other, can be safeguarded. However, the position in the government were only occupied by ruling class people, in which they had immense power to exploit and to extract resources. So in the earliest form of government, the policy or decision making limited only to the maintenance of safety, but it started to expand when they realized that economic is very much important for them. So they started to introduce reforms on the economic and tax to make sure that they could gain as much as revenue as they can. But in the 18th century, the Western European countries were in the process of separating the public and private spheres. So particularly, we could see that how they would react in the France right now, where religion is a private issue for personal matters. And in the 18th century, the push for limitation of government were rapid among the scholars. But all of that changes after the Second World War, because at that time there was a need to rebuild the country, especially to reconstruct the social institution in terms of education, housing, and healthcare. And we could see, for example, in many Western European countries, they provide a public healthcare service to their people. And until today, the functions of government still changing, and the changes could be seen on how the expansion of the function of government becomes wider. So it is even more than what have been seen in the early 19th century. So first of all, in the 20th century, the government has the authority to make binding decisions to all its people. So for example, in the recent pandemic, we can see that government started to close borders and restrict travel and impose quarantine regulations to the visitors. And also it can order the resources to address society-wide concerns like providing vaccination programs to the nationwide. And it also started to address issues that private or non-profit actors could not deal with, or will not deal with, because either they are not profitable for them, or it is lack of address or decision making authority, such as for example climate change issue. And last but not least, it also has to restrain its power and violence, while also give or serve as natural arbiter in conflicts between citizens, as well as between citizens and private companies. So these are the function of government in the 20th century, and we could see that it has been much implemented, where most of the countries started to join the discussion on the climate change, on the environment policies, and you could see that most that join are the government institutions instead of the private institutions. So it is much the government responsibility to address this issue, to make sure that the environment is safe for all people in the world. So that's all for my part. Thank you very much.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ahmad Siso. My metric number is 1814935. Okay, for my part of the presentation, okay, for my group topic, the government of Malaysia and the policy on environment. Okay, my part is where I will question where do Malaysia actively participate on maybe international conference, regional conference regarding on this environmental issue. Okay, my answer is yes. Recently, in Glasgow, Scotland, Malaysia attend United Nations framework convention about climate change, where the topic that was discussed in the conference is where how to secure a global net zero gas emission to the world, and to also to make sure like the temperature of the earth do not go more than 1.5 degree of Celsius. Okay, other topic also discussed where they say they want to how to adapt and protect the communities and natural habitat of the people and the animal also. The aim of this conference is to make sure all of the country can work together, look for an to strike an agreement on a comprehensive emission and balance goal on how to protect the planet Earth. The Ministry of Environment and Water, Datuk Seri Tuan Ibrahim Tuan Man, welcome this decision on global warming and climate change. Means that we need to reduce it. He mentioned a decision that it is important to support global efforts to ensure the goal of limiting global warming by 1.5 degrees Celsius is achieved. Okay, Datuk Seri Tuan Ibrahim Tuan Man delivered a message regarding to the topic where he state that it is important that Malaysia and other world other world country, they need to make sure that the gas emission of GHC need to be reduced, because this greenhouse gas emission will affect the world. Means that it will not just affect Malaysia, it will affect all the people. It will affect the climate change, all of that. The temperature of this world will increase, and then the water will increase because of the melting of the glacier in Iceland. So around the area of Iceland or something like that. So for me, like what he mentioned is true. That all of us need to make sure that we need to reduce the emission of gas GHG. No, because we can see in most of the various environmental policy has been implemented by other country, where the reduction of GHG emission, like after they deduct this gas emission, greenhouse gas, like the environment will improve, something like that. So for me, like it is important that all of the world country and Malaysia also follow this policy and try to implement it, because it will give a good effect to all of the people. In the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Malaysia also mentioned about Malaysia agreed to sign a pledge on the global methane pledge, where they are planning to reduce the global methane emission to the world. The plan is to seek a mutual commitment and agreement on the reduction of global methane emission in Malaysia to at least they mention about 30% to reduce the emission of methane gas by 2030, compared to 2020 lah. They mentioned there was a lot of methane gas was released in Malaysia, so they're planning by 2030 they want to reduce to 30%. So for me, it will give a good effect to Malaysia lah. So I agree when they sign a pledge on this deal. Lastly, Malaysia also agreed to sign a pledge on the Glasgow Leader Declaration for Forest and Land Use, where the plan is where all all of their activity related to deforestation will be stopped by 2030. That's the plan. And this declaration aim is to make sure that all of the country commitment in a proper land use, conservation of forests, and sustainable management of forests and ecosystem inside the forest, where the plan is to maintain at least 50% of country landmass under forest cover. Means that they want each country to have maybe 50% of a forest preserve. Means that there are certain type of forests that cannot be cut or cannot be cleared. They need to make sure they preserve it. So the reason is because they want to make sure like they will not cut all of the trees, so the carbon dioxide will not be will not go to the trees, something like that. Means that they want to make sure like this the temperature, the climate change, all will not be worsened by deforestation, because we all know deforestation also have effect on climate change, on the environment. So for me, it is important. I also agree on this. Okay, so that is all for me. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. My name is Fazlan Arif, matric number 1915997. So I will be continuing our presentation, which is Malaysian visions on environmental issue. So first of all, one of the few government agencies which is responsible for the environmental issue we have is Dasar Alam Sekitar Negara, which is DASN, which is one of the factors that were involved in the creation of the environmental policy, where they are administering issues related to the government and monitoring the enforcement of activities related to the flora and fauna. And then we have Department of Environment, DOE, where since 1981 it has become an influential body in development of implementation of the Malaysian environmental policy, where its main function is to prevent and control pollution, and also to improve the environment in line with the purpose of the Environment Quality Act 1974. So if we look at the environmental issue in Malaysia, such as in the September 2020, where more than 1 million households in Malaysia, which mostly populates in the Kelang Valley, suffered an extended water cuts after the illegal chemical dumping, which harmed the aging water purification system. So, and a month later, before even the courts could identify and charge the culprits for the September incident, a similar chemical dumping happens again, which left then 1 million homes without water for days, and it kept on happening. And all the citizens demand for a stronger enforcement against the industrial polluters and to reforms, where during that time we have YB Yin, who served as Minister of Energy, Science, Technology, Environment and Climate Change, where we made environmental law reform one of her main issues. So early in her term, she ordered an investigation into the public-private environmental monitoring system that did not respond during the chemical poisoning of the Kim River, with 16,000 and shut 111 schools and left the river smelling of oil and black with dead fish. So the argument or the question here is it really necessary to amend the laws in order to punish the violators? So we take a look at the core of Malaysia's national environmental policy, the Environmental Quality Act EQA of 1974, which aimed to prevent and control the pollution and set up to punish who recklessly harm the environment. So even with the amendments, with some officials or critics say that both Malaysia's economic and increasing attention to the environmental concern today have far surpassed the scope of the 46 years old, which is very old, and they say that building a new and broader range code is necessary to prevent further pollution issues. So According to the president of Environmental and Social Justice Group, Sahabat Alam Malaysia, Mirnasri Rahman, she says that the recurring pollution incidents and water cuts have exposed uh, to fundamental problems within the EQA with the Act, where the fines are insufficient to deter the companies from polluting and the land and the waterways even after the 1996 amendment. So, according to sh- according to her, even if the fine is 100 million ringgit or even 24 million dollar, it won't even deterrence enough for the multinational corporation because they make much more than that. So, she advocates for a stronger penalty where longer jail sentences under EQA to make enforcement for the law to be more serious. So a lot of steps and amendment need to be made in order to successfully punish the violators and prevent from the same situation from happening over again. So I think that's all from me. Thank you for listening.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good morning to everyone. I am Misbahul Munir bin Muhammad Rosni, metric number 1815765. So today I will presenting on the last segment of this video presentation, which is the recommendation to the government. There are few recommendations to the government regarding the participation in and enforcement of environment policies. The first recommendation is through policy. The government should set a few policies that were based on environment. The main goals of the policy is to reduce or prevent any harmful effects on ecosystem resulting from human activities. The government is the one that responsible in making the policy. They are the one that can manage the country. One of the example of the environmental policy that should be created by the government of Malaysia is about illegal logging. In Malaysia, there are too many cases of illegal logging occurs that causes many other problems to arise. Some of the problem that arise because of the illegal logging is flood and landslide. As reported by Astro Awani News on 12 November 2015, the landslide that occurs at Karak Pekar were caused by uncontrolled logging. 6 years later, the same scenarios occurs again, but for this time, it's caused flood. Berita Harian News on 11 January 2021 reported that the illegal logging is the main cause of the flood getting worse. By creating and setting a policy, government can help in protecting the environment. The second recommendation is through enforcement. The government should make an environmental enforcement to achieve full implementation of environmental requirement to stop the activities that can give the negative effect to environment. Through enforcement, we can ensure that all of the set of idea on environment will work and succeed. Enforcement also including the inspection by the government to determine the level of compliance and to detect violation by the regulated community. This is important as it helps the government to know whether their policy is work or not. Apart from that, the government also can help in educational programs regarding the environment. By having this educational program, it helps to create the awareness among the regulated community about environment, and they get to know about what do's and don'ts in protecting the environment.